Well, a warm welcome, everyone. I'm James from Attrax.
And I'm Steve from Robo Recruiter.
And a warm welcome to our webinar today, discussing how AI, automation and chatbots enhance your candidate experience in your career site. Two very hot topics during lockdown, AI, automation in particular, and also candidate experience, which has been debated extensively. We're here because I'm really happy to say that Robo Recruiter and Attrax have formed an alliance. Our technology now works seamlessly together, and we rolled out a client, which we're going to show you today, and we have many more in the pipeline as well. So it's a really exciting time for both companies, and we really believe, Steve and I, that together we're stronger. We're bringing best of breed solutions together, and so we want to talk a little bit today about that and to demo stuff to you. The format of today's discussion is going to be like a private fireside chat between two old buddies, something like that. Anyway, we only met 9 months ago, even though we've been in the industry for many years. I don't know Steve. I've only known Steve for a fairly short time, but we do have several things in common. One is we live in Sussex. We both live in Sussex. Two is we seem to have this habit of employing the same staff, not at the same time, I might add. And thirdly, we found out this morning we both like the two Ronnies. So there's a lot of common ground there. If you have any questions, there's plenty of time for that at the end. We've got Beatrice Calderella here with us, who's the head of marketing at Attrax. Well done, Beatrice, for organising it. Thank you very much. But also, Beatrice will be there for fielding questions as well. Sorry, Steve.
Just thanking Beatrice for pulling it all together. It's no mean feat. So
yeah, exactly. So a few questions at the end. Please ask anything. There'll be plenty of time for that. Steve, you all set? You got anything to add?
No, not really. I'd like to introduce you actually, James, if you allow me to be so bold. You can have a swing at introducing me.
Okay.
So James is the founder of the recruitment marketing agency Format, and is the managing director there. Has been there for 15 years. He's led that business through 2 trade sales and formed the technology company Attrax in 2019 to help tap into the huge growth in HR tech within the direct talent acquisition marketplace. Core idea being that career sites are more than just creative projects. They're built on specialist HR technology. So I've done you there proud, James.
Thank you, Steve. I'll talk a bit more about what Steve, or what I mean by that. But just to introduce Steve, so Steve's been driving digital transformation across the talent industry for the past 20 years. So 10 of those were at Total Jobs, where he joined at launch as employee 4 and went on to lead their international partnership business as managing director. Then in 2011, he joined LinkedIn to lead the global search, staffing and RPO strategic organization for EMEA, and was there for 8 years. And then the past couple of years, Steve's been growing Robo Recruiter, an early stage candidate data enrichment business. Steve is on a mission to make hiring more human through simple yet powerful automation. And I'm sure he's going to talk to us a little bit more about that later. Steve, would you like to tell us a little bit more about Robo Recruiter and what you do?
Thank you, James. Yes, it's a bit of a contradictory paradox there, isn't there? Making hiring more human again through automation. It's not lost on us. What we want to be able to provide our talent acquisition, the industry, is the ability to use automation to do the heavy lifting, scalable tasks that just shouldn't be done by humans anymore, because humans are no good at it. We can't be consistent at scale. It's also that kind of engagement, trying to get people on the phone, trying to qualify them, doing a web form, filling out. It's all very 1980s, and that knocks on to the time to hire. You can see there, traditional time to hire, around 25 days for most roles. We're being quite generous. In some cases, they can be open and hanging around a lot longer. And of course, while they're open, they're not hitting bottom line profit growth. It takes time for talent acquisition teams to engage the right talent, be it go back to the ATS, find out where those people are now and who they are since they've been aging out on a static database. And of course, these talent teams are a bit overwhelmed at the moment. COVID's been a forcing mechanism to have huge swathes of people trying to get through a smaller door. And all those people are applying, and the traditional kind of current state is suboptimal, it's broken. To ghost people or abandon them or say, hey, you're thanks but no thanks, we'll contact you if you are good, is just not good enough.
Mhm.
So that whole getting hold of those people, engaging them, and then qualifying them and determining whether they've got the right to work and they've got the right compliance docs and experience in place, screening them with the hiring managers and then taking them through to interview. It's a lot of admin there. There's a lot of friction. And that's what Robo Recruiter does really well. It transforms that process and it expedites the areas in which humans play best, which is the relational part. So you can see there 5 times faster selection of our clients that we've been working with. And how we do that is very much by using the technology to engage with people where they live mostly, which is their phones. We send them a text, an SMS, and they click on that and have an automated scripted conversation, and they fill out their PALs. And PALs for us is the person's position, availability, location, skills, and salary. If you've got those data points, you're golden, because you know that James is based in Sussex. He's available next week to run Google globally. He's located in the right way to be commutable. He's got the skill sets, the salary expectations to be front of the right queue. So the automation comes into its own here to push people to the front of the right queue, not to pass themselves off as a human, because we're all quite mischievous. And I know when I have chatbots already kind of virtual assistant, I try and break it. But actually, if you acknowledge and say, I'm a virtual assistant on behalf of Tesla, we believe you're right for this. Can we have a conversation with us and we can push you to the front of the right queue and expedite that through? People will do that. They're prepared to do that. So that SMS campaign in the moment is key, that immediacy. 40% respond in the first 10 minutes and 80% in the first 24 hours, really quick. And then screening, they can vet themselves against it. They can schedule a time to speak to a recruiter should they earn the right to get there, because they are the right type of person. And of course, running concurrently, it can automatically ask who else they can refer for the role, or they can provide references, and that can be done in an automated way. It just frees up the time for the talent team to do what they do best, James. So that's Robo Recruiter exec summary in a nutshell. We'll elaborate a little bit more with some of the clients that we've got together. Why don't I throw the ball back over to you, and you talk us through a little bit about the value proposition of Attrax and how together we're stronger, as you say, on your side.
That's brilliant stuff. Thanks, Steve. So we've got a really core idea, and that's that career sites are powered by specialist HR tech. They're not just creative projects. Now that might seem quite controversial. You know, there might be people in our audience. In fact, I know there are people in our audience who have maybe won recruitment marketing awards recently, or national online recruitment awards, ostensibly for the creativity of their career site. And we're not downplaying the creative element. However, what we are emphasizing is that a career site should be a system, and it shouldn't be something that's just built every 2 or 3 years, thrown in the bin and replicated and rebuilt again. And what I mean by that is, generally speaking, career sites are seen as this quite onerous project that's done every 2 or 3 years. Maybe takes 3 to 9 months to actually build a business case. Then you put a specification based on the requirements at the time of writing that specification. Then you go out to tender, you speak to a number of agencies, usually creative agencies, possibly some open source platforms. It takes another 6 to 12 months to build, and then the system has a shelf life of 2 years before you have to start the whole thing again. Okay, so you know, what we're advocating and what we're selling at Attrax is completely the opposite of that. It's a software as a service, cloud-based system, which effectively means your career site will never go out of date. We have a bit of a bugbear here at Attrax around this reference to a career page. You know, career page really downplays the value of the career site. You know, it shouldn't just be a bolt-on to your you know, a bolt onto your corporate site at all. It should be something much more sophisticated than that. So a career site is a sophisticated piece of HR technology. It targets the most valuable candidates, and obviously the different types of candidates, different types of roles has changed greatly over the last 6-9 months. It maximizes the visibility of jobs on Google, provides seamless ATS integration. We see so many poor ATS integrations. I'm going to show you a couple of horror stories in a minute. Uses AI to provide a positive and relevant talent experience, enabling you to profile users, active or passive, and ostensibly, and this is not something you necessarily think about first and foremost, but enables you to react to the market. And we found that all Attrax's clients, through our fantastic CMS, which is fully self-serve, system admin, they control. It meant you know, at the end of March this year, they could react very quickly to the COVID announcements and the pandemic, change the employer brand maybe, obviously change the nature of jobs they're advertising and things like that. So you know, it gives you that flexibility basically. So that's us. Steve, I wonder if you could just go back to this whole thing around hiring more human using automation. You know, I love it, but I just want a bit more information, please.
Yeah, I'm happy to. And you can see on the screen a range of your clients, and we're just getting started with some of those in working together. So we'll come back to that. You called me out on the absolute contradictory statement, automation. These are some use cases here that we see across the industry. So it's the fact that those ATSs that you integrate with, the data that's poured into that does is static and it does age out. And for GDPR purposes, you need to contact those people, get their opt-in so you can market to them, keep them warm as a talent community. Now, if you're doing that manually, that's a really tough task to do. And if you're trying also to sift through tons of applicant response, that's going to be tough, because we're working with a big investment bank, and 10% of the response gets a human interaction to it, 90% doesn't. Yeah. And they're getting 250,000 applications for sort of 8,000 hires they make. So how can they make sure that the human element is there, or compassionately, if those people aren't right now, they can be put somewhere else and kept warm, and they can have alerts when something does come up for them. But of course, they're not just abandoned or ghosted. And then the dreaded, how can we schedule some time and we can get the panel of interviewers together, and we get the interviewee together, and we can put it in everyone's calendars. And are you free next Wednesday? No, because I need to take the dog to the vet. It's just a headache, admin-wise, to get all that together. Whereas consumer journey, we're used to going to OpenTable back when we could, booking a restaurant. And for that then to go into your calendar, how many people, 7 people, 8 p.m. So the automating scheduling within the conversation, once you've got to the right, because you are eligible to work, you will do a drugs test, you haven't got any unspent convictions, you know, you can be quite open, honest and transparent about what you need. And then, okay, 10 a.m. and it goes into everyone's calendars, and you get the Zoom invite with a nice branded background. That's all automated. And then the good people know good people. You don't want a cookie cutter approach of hiring exactly the same people for diversity, inclusion, belonging, but you want the ability to say, hey, we're just about to offer you, who else do you know? And through our systems, we close that loop, and we find that 50% of the people that we ask go on to recommend someone else, and 70% of those people then go on to fill this out. So the references, the referrals, all of this stuff that is just HR day-to-day admin headache, we can take care of that, and we do a really good job of doing it through simple but powerful automation. So all those pinch points, that friction, we can just better serve the talent team so they can focus on the candidate experience. You see 70% prefer it rather than form filling. They prefer to have a yes, no, 5 years available next week conversation on their phone than they do actually doing the same thing with one of the talent team over the phone and a number of different times. Bottom right there, you can see the speed of how quick it is, but it's the branded career site I'd like to double down on here, because of course that's the center of their journey now, and that's something that you optimize and make sure that everything drives back to that port in a storm, isn't it? So perhaps, James, you could elaborate a little bit on what changes you've seen that have been forced by COVID over the past few months for the talent acquisition teams themselves.
Of course. So, I mean, you know, you can take it as read. A lot of the people that we're used to dealing with, a lot of clients, many of them have been furloughed. Many have been made redundant. Teams are smaller, but often they're doing more work than normal. Like, I'll expand on that in a second. Investments can be put on hold. Obviously, the best companies understand that talent is a strategic investment. What we have seen is a reduction in advertising budgets. So advertising is really focused on active candidate activation, and that's certainly reduced considerably in the last 6 months or so. But I think the most important thing is that certainly we see that the career site has got more important. What you're referring to there, Steve, was Robo Recruiter sitting on a really strong industrial strength career site platform, and companies need that more than ever. You know, if you think about it, anybody who's been hired in the last 6 months, certainly from a white collar perspective, has probably never been to see the office that they're about to go to, or may never go to post COVID. They probably haven't met their line manager face to face. They might not have met any of their colleagues, and these are all the things you kind of take for granted, don't you, before the pandemic? And all these little things, all these little slivers, added to that impression of the employer brand, and you just don't have that. So in a funny way, your career site with its great content, you know, its stories about your colleagues, and of course the candidate experience, that is now your employer brand. It's the most important thing. So career sites have got more important, and it was interesting because I do remember back in April, May, listening to a few commentators, and they were actually saying that employer branding might become less relevant, but actually, of course, it's become more relevant, and it's actually become more complex as well. So, you know, pre-COVID, a lot of roles, and you know, I'm generalising here, but a lot of roles were advertised in candidate scarce markets. You know, they're for hard to fill, hard to find people, and a great deal of the talent acquisition specialist was a great deal of the time was actually focusing on those hard to fill roles. Now that's flipped considerably, and the job of recruitment is a job of selection, and that has a big knock-on effect on your career site and the candidate experience, because whereas previously it might have been completely weighted towards hard to fill roles, hard to find candidates, now you have to have that balance. There's kind of two types of candidate experience. There's two types of recruitment process. And the biggest challenge at the moment, I'd say, is keeping that employer brand high whilst dealing with volume selection, whilst potentially discouraging you know, the easy to find candidates a little bit in a polite way, whilst obviously maintaining the hard to find ones. You know, and that in itself is fairly complex and requires technology to assist that. Steve, I don't know whether that resonates with you, and if it does, it'd be great to hear how Robo's automation supports that sort of high volume hires, easier to fill roles, and makes it easier for talent acquisition specialists.
You're very kind. You set me up very nicely there, James. Yes, it does. 100% agree, because we've seen, this is an example we're showing on screen. So if you can imagine, COVID, we were all aware, has put a big strain on acute frontline healthcare resources, and also the emergency services. We now see deliveries online from supermarkets and fulfillment centres, pickers and packers, as being emergent folk. These people we need to deliver us just some semblance of normality in our lives, to get these packages to us. You've seen some of the biggest delivery freight companies, logistics firms, just being permanent peak in terms of their hiring. That seasonal push, that surge is now just plateaued out very, very high. This is an example of a business we've been working with for a few years, one of the biggest global online retailers that are hiring for their fulfillment facilities around the UK. Now, they wanted to drive relevant candidates to it that had an open mind in terms of weekend shift patterns. So we qualified that as part of the conversation they had with us. They wanted to know that they were prepared to act under the clock, work really hard, and be on their feet a certain amount of hours a day. You know, these are quite binary qualifiers, dependencies, successful. And also, could they upload their right to work evidence, a picture of a passport or something that they know they'll pick up in the physical assessment centre, but shows that it's going to be taken seriously. Now this, during this period, which was 30th of September to 15th of November, so not many weeks at all really, they had over 18,500 applicants come through, all feeding into RoboRecruiter. And RoboRecruiter self-scheduled 60%, and they had live call centre agents with the 40%. And that translated to 13,000 welcome event bookings that are pre-qualified. That meant that business could repurpose their call centre team size down from 17 to 9 to make sure that those people were doing meaningful human work, adding value rather than stuff that could be done robotically and people prefer to be done robotically. So when high volume, it is a really good toll gate done in the right way. Now, people that weren't eligible at that moment in that area, we said, would you be prepared to commute to the next fulfillment centre? Yes. If you've got means of commuting, a car, motorbike, etc. So we actually qualified them in, and we opened out their mindset to think about other areas of work as well. So it actually broadened it out, but it poured in huge top of funnel. And as you can see there, 60% was all self-scheduled. And just to finish up on that point, when you're scheduling something yourself, and it's so easy to do, it's almost like an upfront social contract. The dropouts, the no-shows are minimalized because it's so easy to schedule in a time that works back for you. So it really helps. We work with 8 of the top 10 staffing businesses and their teams. It really helps them focus. All of that kind of high-level admin is all done and gifted to them, and then they get the relevant candidates with a bow on to say, give these people a call because they're eligible, they're placeable now, anytime people, and they can then prioritize according to that. So that gives you a little bit of an idea, James, about high volume. What's your experience there?
Yeah, well, I'm happy to show everyone our integration. You know, I actually read today in the Guardian that graduate recruitment suffers the biggest fall since 2008. So this is example here for Atkins, part of S&C Lavalin, and their early career site is probably a really great example. Fortunately, Atkins are still running their grad campaign this year, whereas many companies have unfortunately had to pull theirs. But this is where we use Robo Recruiter's automated chatbot facility to effectively as a pre-screening, pre-filtering app, which reduces the number of applications and maintains the quality of those applications. So many of the products on the market today, you know, there are lots and lots of technology out there which focuses on selection post-application. So, you know, effectively casting the net as wide as possible, and then ideally filtering those high volumes of application down into the most relevant candidates. But we can actually do that pre-application without damaging the candidate experience. I'm sure you saw there the chatbot experience of that, you know, effectively that sort of PALS information that Steve's been referring to can be ascertained, and the suitability of that candidate, you know, the red lines, if you like, can be ascertained in that early stage pre-application. What that means that, you know, even for candidates that don't qualify, they can be politely sent off to other areas of the site, and they can be let down gently. And at the end of the day, you're not wasting their time. So, you know, that's one example of a candidate experience for sort of easier to fill or volume hires. And the principle we're talking about here is I guess, using a kind of an elastic candidate experience. So, and what I mean by elastic is that it depends on whether the role is easy to fill or hard to fill. You kind of want automation and technology to be used as either an accelerator, so, you know, hard to find people are accelerated to that application form, or indeed a break where, you know, easier to find people are asked a few more questions. Obviously, there are lots of other ways of doing this. You know, we've used filtering questions for years. We can actually do now actually application specific application forms. So you can make the application forms much briefer, much less information for harder to fill roles, and the opposite for easier to fill roles. And of course, personalization, and we haven't got time today to talk about this in detail, but hyper-personalized content can work really well for both types of roles, whether they be hard to fill or easy to fill, to really either act as that accelerator for speeding up the candidate conversion, or that brake on the candidate conversion too. So, you know, content is one of those things that actually spans, I guess, both of those. Steve, what about hard to fill roles? How does Robo Recruiter support that?
So there's no magic kind of solution to mustering up those in-demand people that know their value and don't respond to anyone. There are certain roles that we know there's just a dearth of those type of people through not enough skills and training being applied. What you can do is you can step back and make sure you pour in at the top of the funnel a much wider new normal for diversity, inclusion, belonging, making sure you take away all the friction to having this in front of the right people in the right way at the right time. So I'll just pick on two there, NHS and Tesla. So NHS, we qualify huge amounts of doctors and nurses, and they do this at 5 in the morning when their shifts finish. They qualify their general medical counsel certification or their nurse pin, 26 pieces of compliance docs before they can go onto the staff bank to be rotated in. And we know that there are 30,000 healthcare vacancies at the moment that are just because people are self-isolating because of COVID, or they're looking after somebody, so they can't go into that. And you look at that 1.3 million people that the NHS employs, there's some big numbers at play here. So that's certainly a way to make sure that you take the friction away of them actually playing themselves in to be eligible. Another one, Tesla. We've just gone live with Tesla for their gigafactory in Berlin.
Pretty good.
7,500 hires, but they're looking for mechanical engineers, design engineers, some pretty difficult to fill roles. And this is Berlin, and they're looking for people to commute across Germany. So what we've done is we've made it super simple. You can text the word jobs to 77222, and if you're in Germany, on a German telco, so to our rest of the world listeners, those in the UK, that won't work for you. But if you're on a German telco like T-Mobile and you're based in Frankfurt, you text the word jobs to 77222. Tesla will come up, have an automated conversation, it'll play into their brand experience. You'll be able to swipe like some sort of dating app and work out which job is relevant for you, or you wouldn't even know it's us. And you can then, and it drives back to the relevant role on their career site, but pre-populated and branched with all the information that you just put in, so you don't have to start from scratch.
Great.
So there's a couple there that we've just talked about. Most of the clients we're working with in our pipeline of what's coming next are these direct hiring talent acquisition teams and businesses. The staffing businesses kind of get this. This is business as usual for them. But as my years at LinkedIn have shown, you need to make sure that you're helping your clients and your clients' clients, and this has just been a big enabler for everybody to use.
Of course,
so, maybe you could just elaborate a little bit more on what your experience of that as well.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the example you just given for Tesla, going straight from an SMS to a pre-filled application form. I mean, that's ideal, isn't it? It is ideal for a hard to fill role. Obviously, the starting point is Google for everything. Google's, again, post-pandemic, Google has become more important because Google Organic could be your best advertising source, particularly if your budgets have been cut. And there's a general expectation that you should be getting sort of passive candidate traffic from Google for Jobs, for example. And we're showing here some examples of our client SNC Lavalin coming up nice and high on the rankings for Google for Jobs. So that's kind of a hygiene factor, if you like, and you should expect that from your career site, but not all career sites do that. I guess the next thing is something you shouldn't do, and that's this sort of dreaded login to apply that you see across a lot of career sites. Because career sites are often a creative project, ATS integrations, strong ATS integrations, aren't always taken as seriously as they should be. You know, this is the conversion point. You've done all the heavy lifting. You've done the EVP. You've probably engaged your candidates several times with great content. Maybe even your chatbot, if you have one, but then you're presented with this kind of login to apply screen, which is straight out the ATS, and it's utterly unacceptable. And you can see here a number of brands getting this wrong, and you know, this particular slide could be ginormous actually, because I'm afraid that's the way it is. So strong links to the ATS are absolutely vital if you want to have success in hiring hard to fill roles for your career site. So here's an example of somebody coming in. They're going to come in from Google onto the SNC Lavalin site, presented with clear calls to action. Obviously, the roles there. One-click apply, and once you click that, what you'll see is the first piece of information that we asked them to fill in is their email address. And you might think, well, why is there a sort of two-stage application there for email and then the rest of information? And that's straight out of the school of Amazon.com. What we're doing there is getting the most basic piece of information we possibly can for a candidate, because if they drop off, then we can retarget and remarket to them. Okay, so again, this to us, Attrax is a hygiene factor, but you'll see most career sites don't actually have this. And indeed, it's not necessarily relevant to have this for a different type of candidates in an easier to fill role. maybe you expect some drop off there. You need that flexibility, that acceleration brake that I was talking about a little bit earlier on. Now, obviously, once that candidate's submitted their email, it means we can retarget them. So exactly the same. We've all been retargeted. In e-retail, whereby how much for a pair of trainers? we've got the fear, and suddenly you get an email through saying we really think you should buy these things, and it's exactly the same. I'm not suggesting that looking for a job is the same as buying a pair of trainers, but we're transposing the best of e-retail and bringing that into the career site system using marketing automation and retargeting. On the right hand side, again, you can see a kind of softer approach there, where you can, on a job specific basis, allow strong candidates to receive targeted content if they are there to leave the site. So effectively a pop-up saying please don't go, or come back soon, or what have you. So that combined with the sort of really strong content that we have, and that personalization side of things. So as I mentioned, whether you're active or passive, or applying to a hard to fill role or an easy to fill role, or a volume hire or not, that personalization can assist all forms. And in the same way as the chatbot gets the best basic information, the PALs information through, in the same way a career site system actually makes assumptions based on the behavior of the candidate to personalize that candidate experience, and therefore present content that's highly relevant to them, using strong AI and machine learning. So that's kind of how we do it. And as I say, hopefully I've shown you two candidate journeys there, how they can be very different. But in today's world, where there's a real balance between two different types of role, you need to make sure your career site supports a completely different candidate experience depending on the role. Okay, so we're working together. Hopefully you guys have seen that. I'm really excited about it. Steve, what makes you really excited about our partnership?
People use that word far too often, don't they? But I'm genuinely excited because I think it fills a gap that we've got at the moment, which is that when you're looking at transforming your talent acquisition process and making it more efficient to reduce the time to hire, and make sure that those people involved are doing stuff that's better for them to be doing. There are a number of component parts involved, and I think we live in a world of collaboration now. You can overreach, but I think the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. And we know what we do really well, and we know what you do really well. So the fact that we can embed into your overall experience of what you're providing your clients, and have the automated candidate data enrichment, and we can do the screening and all of that part, all sitting there nice, comfortably. Egos aside, we wouldn't even know it's us. It's all branded in the colours. We're really proud of that Atkins SNC Lavalin example, and there's more to come. But I'm excited by that, and I know there are other businesses where we hand off to elegantly. And there's a tech stack that many of your clients and our clients already have, and they really expect us to play nicely with each other. And then we hand off elegantly, and it doesn't feel jarring. It just lands and resonates and feels good. And that experience is something that I know you and I are very passionate about. So that's what
100%. Yeah, 100%. I mean, certainly a one size fits all solution or an end-to-end solution is not the right solution for most buyers these days. We know that, and the ability for companies to work together and plug gaps and holes in each other's functionality and features sets is really, really important. And best of breed, of course. Why extend your remit to additional functions and features rather than focusing on real detailed understanding and development of your core offering? We would always focus on the latter for sure, and that's why really important. Really excited about the partnership. So I'm really pleased. We've had loads of attendees today. I think we've got a few questions just to wrap up. So I think we've got 5 minutes or so. So Beatrice, have you got any questions from the Be Kind to Us, hopefully? But yeah, have you got any questions from the floor, please?
Yes, so we actually have a couple. So the first one, what's the future for bots and automation over the next 18 months?
I'm going to have a swing at that. Thank you, Beatrice, and thank you to the person who composed that question. I think bots are going to become commoditized. It just like LinkedIn democratized the CV database. it lost its value overnight to be a point of difference. Your professional record of note was on LinkedIn. I think bots are going to become very easy to get and deploy. The difference here is how that becomes a business as usual channel to get the data currency structured in the right way, and what you do in terms of the next steps and an automated flow that becomes helpful for the talent team, not a hindrance. So it's certainly like automation. We're seeing a bias towards video interviewing. How you could have an asynchronous video answer within the conversation. If you've got 3 questions, one of them might be, tell us why you embody the cultures and values of our business in a short video. You can get somebody's appetite for comfort on being on the digital medium. We're all having to do tons of Zoom calls now. Others are, we're seeing us handing off to gamified assessments. And we're about to announce a partnership to the market shortly that will complement the Attrax partnership. There'll be 3 of us at the table on how we hand off to a company that will be able to determine the candidate's level of risk, whether they're reckless if they're in sales for negotiation through games. It's pretty cool. And I definitely see these micro parts all pulling together to give something greater than the sum of their parts. So that's where I see this coming through, and that expectation that all of that data that's owned by the company, the talent team, flows back in against the candidate record and is fast tracked and is done something in the moment. That real-time engagement is going to be key.
Absolutely, and just to add to that, I mean, in fairness, there's a very wide range of how companies are approaching automation and to be fair, the sophistication of their career site. Some companies still have a careers page that's a sort of an afterthought, an add-on to their main corporate site with a few jobs on, powered by the ATS. And lots of very, very good companies have that currently, and they'll obviously want to move from not very good to what Steve and I have been talking about today. And then at the other end of the spectrum, there are companies really at the vanguard of what we're talking about, and what their expectations are over the next couple of years are things like hyper personalization, where you know far more information about a candidate even before they've hit the career site, so you can present them with almost like a tailored, personalized candidate journey specific to their requirements. It's the sort of thing we're seeing at the the forefront of retail, and that will all work itself down within a recruitment context, without a doubt. So for some companies, though, it's going to be catching up. It's catching up to some of the things we talked about today, and that might take them 18 months, 2 years. And for other companies, it will be looking at where the big money is, e-retail, and saying, right, what can we leverage from that to provide the best possible candidate experience and best possible outcome for our companies.
Great point.
Great, thank you both. So James, I think this one is for you. I need a new career site, but politically it's a challenge. How might I overcome this?
Yeah, so in our experience, that's a really interesting question. So in our experience, the career site is often owned by different stakeholders. To get a career site implemented, particularly a system which is technologically advanced rather than a creative project, it potentially makes the situation worse. Generally speaking, you've got a head of talent acquisition who might be the ultimate owner of the project, but then marketing would be interested, particularly the head of marketing and their team, particularly if that career site was previously sat on the marketing asset, if you see what I mean. So you've got to tick that box. It's the same with the information systems, HRIS, or even IS, sort of at corporate level. They're going to want to know that if you're going to be doing a strong integration with SuccessFactors SAP or with Oracle Recruiting Cloud or something like that, you're going to need to tick those boxes. So there is a process around that, around getting a consensus earlier on. We actually have an ebook download which is specifically on that. It's actually more exciting than it sounds. And so for anybody out there who is considering embarking on this sort of project, that can be the hardest thing. It's not the supplier selection, it's the getting the project signed off internally, because this is still kind of interesting stuff that many people haven't experienced before. The benefits are absolutely brazen, but at the same time, you know, there is a process to be done. So I'd recommend you look at our ebook, and actually I think there's a link to it. There should be a link to it at the end of this presentation for sure.
Great, thank you, Jay. Yes, we have one more. Can your chatbot, so I believe this is for Steve, be configured so the text aligns with the brand's tone of voice?
Very much. That personality, that tone of voice should be a natural continuation, whatever the starting point is. When you go and you say Alexa or Siri, you know that's a virtual assistant going off to fetch you some information from the web and bring it back. It's not passing itself off as a person. We're quite mischievous, so we probably try and break that sort of stuff. So it's very clear to signpost that it's a virtual assistant. There is lots of investment about conversational AI using machine learning and trying to deduce what somebody means. Though they haven't cracked that code yet. When they will, it's going to be really powerful. But that's why I say focus on that simple process of just augmenting the human and making sure that the bits that can be done well are done well consistently, robustly every time. So those bits, certainly we say the brand, colors, the palette, the livery is all on point and for them and fully branded. But the personality and tone of voice of the questioning is also fully configurable, just to make sure that it's a continuation. Every touch point, everyone's in hiring, everyone's in recruitment, no matter what your function is within the business. Everybody knows good people, everyone's got talent, and every touch point. If you have a bad experience in the recruitment process, you're not going to buy the brand. You're going to tell everybody how crap they are. So we really are working next to these companies to form these flows and make sure that it delivers on the high-end brand values and the employee value proposition that's so important. Talent being the #1 operating priority. You can't afford to mess around with that sort of stuff.
I agree wholeheartedly. I mean, again, another benefit where we're stronger together is that obviously that tone of voice, you know, in the content is something we can specialize in. So buying Attrax and Robo Recruiter together will ensure that you have that you know, EVP tone of voice carried right through, you know, the whole candidate experience every time. So great, Steve, it's been great speaking to you. Let's do this again. It's been a pleasure.
And you, Jay.
Thank you. Our contact details are, I think they're there. So as well, there's some downloads we've got for you guys. So there's a couple of ebooks, Robo's executive summaries available for download. We'll of course mail this session out. Big thanks to Beatrice who arranged the session, and you know, thank you for that, and doing the Q&A at the end. And a small plug for me, I'll be presenting at Talentex Rising next Thursday. 2 sessions, one in the morning, one in the afternoon for our friends in America. So please listen in. It's only 10 minutes, and it just allows me to elaborate even more on some of the things I've talked about today. So it's goodbye from me, James Saunders.
The 2 mornings, and good night from me. Thank you very much.
Good stuff. Okay, thanks guys. Cheerio.
Bye-bye.